Welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast and live stream. I'm Jessie Lezak, CMO at BDEX, along with Adam Fitzgerald. We've got the Enterprise Sales Director of BDEX with us. Always a pleasure to have you back on the show, Adam.
Jessie,
what's new?
It's great to be here. We are wrapping up a really hot summer, and we're gearing up for fall, which is hard to believe that I'm saying that before we know it. Everything Christmas will be out in the stores. But I'm excited to be here with you and with our guest today. I think it's gonna be a really, really good episode.
Yeah, I know. Me too. We're lucky. We've got a really exciting guest to bring on today, Ryan Johnson, Chief Product Officer at CallRail. Let me bring him into the screen. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Hey, thanks,
Ryan.
Jesse. Thanks, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. It is so great to have you on the show. I know we chatted a little bit beforehand, and so I'm excited for our conversation today. And maybe you can kick us off by telling us a little bit about your story and what led you to become the Chief Product Officer at CallRail.
Yeah, so I'll try to interweave a little bit of professional and personal in there. So I'm originally from Saginaw, Michigan, and I started my professional career in finance. And by happenstance, a really good friend of mine, also named Ryan, had a small business doing SEO and SEM for law firms in the early 2000s, and convinced me to come on board and help him with that. And so that was kind of my first foray into both technology and marketing and digital marketing, and had a lot of fun. And it really just snowballed from there. And not to bore everybody with all the ins and outs between there, but fast forwarding, years from there, I worked for a company in the engineering leadership role for a company called Vitrue, doing social media management marketing. We had a platform trying to convince the largest brands in the world that, guess what, social media is really important as part of your marketing. If you can remember those days that sometimes feel long ago and sometimes not, and went through an exciting time of building that platform to support social media campaigns for those brands, and ultimately got acquired by Oracle. And from there, actually kind of started in the early days of AI, worked for a company out west, leading product teams in the early days of computer vision and natural language processing, and using data to detect events as they happen around the world, actually for media. And so kind of understanding as things are happening, whether it was through social media or other data sources, and giving that information to news feeds and saying, this event's happening over here and this thing is taking place over here, and predicting those things as they happen. And eventually made my way back to Atlanta, Georgia, where I am now, in CallRail. A bunch of us here work together at Vitrue and Oracle. So it's kind of getting the band back together, which is always fun. And here are, our CallRail's vision from the beginning was to help every business market with confidence by turning more leads into better customers. And really the beginnings of CallRail were, hence the name CallRail, were to track calls, like what's happening what's driving phone calls to businesses, particularly small, medium businesses and agencies that support these businesses. And that's evolved over time. Kind of fast forward to today, and we're doing things with conversation intelligence. We're doing things with voice AI to help these businesses convert those leads into customers, and really a lead experience platform to not only understand where to better spend your money and track those leads from a digital perspective, but then also, what are the best leads that are coming into your business, and how to convert those leads better, and how to use the best technology out there to help you convert those leads. And that's a little bit of the short story how I came to CallRail. And so now I'm the CPO here. I lead a wonderful product management and product design team here, and have the pleasure of helping lead them and a team of bright people to bring all these wonderful products to market.
That's incredible. What a great story. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that's so cool that you have a group of people from Oracle and you're like bringing the band back together, or however you said it. It's like so cliche, I feel like, in tech to happen. So that's a good thing. But let's get in. You were mentioning conversation intelligence. So let's just dive right in. Conversation intelligence and unlocking insights from every interaction. So catch us up to speed on conversation intelligence for people who it's new to, but then could you take us a little deeper into it on like where it is now and where we're going with it?
Sure. So I think in the general sense is conversation intelligence is really understanding like what's taking place during conversations. It could be over the phone, it could be over messaging, so SMS or social messaging or chat. And certainly here at CallRail, it's become really critical to understand, what's taking place during the discussion, from simple things of sentiment of the call. Was this a good call or a bad call? Was the caller angry, or were they happy, or were they sad? To more advanced things like intent. Were they calling for a service appointment or for a new purchase, or a repeat purchase, or those types of things? And this isn't new technology, I would say. For instance, we've been doing something in this space since 2016. It's just the technology wasn't that great back then. A lot of this, you have to start with a recording of a conversation or the text of the conversation. In our case, we have to start with the recording. And then you have to convert that to text so you can run the analysis on it. So you have to do speech to text. Well, in 2016, that really wasn't that great. And so you'd get a lot of feedback to say, well, there's a lot of gibberish in this conversation. The names are wrong, or the things that they're talking about don't match up. Well, if the speech to text is wrong, the analysis you run on it is probably as wrong too. And so, in my experience, what's really wonderful over the past couple of years with all this AI innovation is a lot of companies were able to kind of plug and play. And certainly we were beneficiaries of this ourselves to say, okay, great. Now we can take these new advanced AI models with automatic speech recognition that are dramatically better. And so now you have these almost perfect transcriptions, and you can run all this analysis on it. And so you think of like good in, good out, and now it's great in and great out. And so doing things that just really dramatically improve things that we've been doing over, the past almost 10 years. And so that's been really exciting. And I think if you look at the individual conversation, there's so many insights that you can get out of it that a human just can't do. If you think of a 20-minute conversation, if you had to go and read a transcript and process it yourself, Jesse and Adam, like you may distill the facts or what happened during the conversation in two different ways. Well, now we can use AI to distill it very easily and say, well, here's the summary of the conversation. And here's the intent of that conversation, and here's went well, and maybe here's what the person that is selling something could have done better. Here's what they did good, and you can do all these wonderful things and package it up in ways to really help businesses improve how they're dealing with customers, whether it's for new sales or repeat sales or customer service. That's at the individual level. The really next generation level of it that I've been really excited about is being able to do that across multiple conversations. So take like 1,000 phone calls or 10,000 phone calls and being able to say the same thing, to say, oh, Ryan is on the phone every day. He speaks to 100 people every day. How can we help Ryan with how he's interacting with these people every day? What are like the 5 good things he's really good at? What are the 5 things that he could improve on? What are the products that he sells the best of? What are the things he steers away from? Does he follow a script? And so really being able to do these multi-conversation insights, that were truly almost impossible just a few years ago because the technology wasn't good enough and didn't really exist. Now you can kind of take not only the individual conversation and do all of this intelligence on it, but now you can go across multiple conversations, and you can actually go across multiple different channels too. So I mentioned phone calls, but then you could interweave phone calls, and maybe they had a chat on a website, or maybe they had a conversation over social messaging, and then you can analyze those all together. And so if you are having a multi-channel conversation with me about buying a new pool, you could have all these insights in one place, which is super powerful to these businesses.
Were you going to say something, Adam?
I was just going to say that's a really powerful insight to have. You hit on something earlier, Ryan. I think you talked about working in the early days of AI, and I think it's easy for us, or easy for people to sometimes think of the evolution of AI as what's happened since ChatGPT made headlines. And we forget that there was a whole build up and run up to even get to that point, right? And so it kind of makes me curious, and I wonder what your insights are on this. When companies analyze these conversations and these different customer interactions, whether that's a call or an online chat or some other form of customer interaction, what are you seeing in terms of best practices to balance both the efficiency and getting the intelligence and the insights that creates action that can impact decisions, but also preserving the human element with regards to customer interactions?
Yeah, I think there's, a lot of the, it really depends on how you view this. In my world, a lot of this is like post-conversation analysis. So you're taking that data and you're trying to empower the humans that are going to go back and have the rest of the conversation. So you're keeping that human element there. You're just trying to superpower them the next time around. And then depending on the analysis that you're doing, I think it's always evolving and improving to make sure that either the models that you're using, the technology or the stack, maybe the prompting that you're using is always evolving, and it may be particular to your business. It may be particular to your vertical, so that you're always learning from it. I think that's never kind of a one and done. And even for the things that I've seen, in the early days, once we figured out, oh my gosh, we can use this thing to summarize, an hour-long conversation into 3 sentences or into 5 sentences. What it was 2 years ago is very different than what it is today, in how we think about it. And so I think it's like an evolving thing. And I think depending the type of business, the type of vertical you're in, there's different aspects to it. If you get it, into different corners, if you think of healthcare and HIPAA, there's those types of considerations as well too, when you think of the data and PII. So there's different facets there as well to consider.
Well, and I would imagine that the way it is today is going to be way different than what we see a year or 2 years from
Absolutely.
now. And so I'm curious, what do you see as far as emerging capabilities in conversational intelligence that you really think are going to be the biggest game changers in the next couple of years?
I think there's still a lot of evolution in the speech to text technology, especially with multi-language. So English is obviously at the top, but you kind of go to like different languages, Spanish, French, those types of things. They're as good, but then the long tail kind of goes out there pretty quickly, unfortunately. So there's a lot of ground to be made up there that I think will get to parity with English, which is great. I think the biggest thing that I'm seeing, and it hasn't hit there quite yet, is around sentiment, which kind of sounds weird. I think sentiment, we always think of emotion and those types of things, and it's not really that. It's not really what people think it is. Many times sentiment is determined by analyzing the text. And now we really want to pull out emotion, right? And I think that's what's going to be one of the biggest unlocks with conversation intelligence, is really pulling out emotion, so that, depending on the words I'm saying, I could be using profanity, but I could be using it in a positive way. Like, yeah, this is a damn good deal. If I say that now in certain tech stacks, it could be picked up as negative sentiment because I use the word damn. It's still there. Or if you think of things like healthcare, where you can have a person that's calling their doctor and they're talking about a cancer diagnosis. Of course, the sentiment is going to be negative because of the topic, but the call may not be negative. The call could be and that's where you have to analyze the tone in those types of things. So I think that's the exciting part of the conversation analysis side of it, is that we're able to actually analyze these more human elements that are part of the audio aspect versus the things that are, more of the transcript, and being able to use these LLMs and give it more context, that as it's doing speech to text, you can kind of tell it, hey, listen for these types of things, or look for these types of things, because we know you're a doctor's office. So they're going to talk about these things. And it doesn't mean that it was a negative phone call. It just means they talk about these subjects. So make sure you don't, classify these as negative sentiment phone calls, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. That's amazing that they can do that too, is like, and it's funny that the word damn would be one that would like flip the trigger. I'd be curious. I used to work for a text messaging app. And so there would be, those trigger words as well. And they're always so hilarious to look at, like, what are the words that get people spammed? And so, the data on the data, the metadata, if you will, is always the best part. But thank you for sharing a little bit about conversational intelligence. We have AP in the comments. I don't know why the comments on LinkedIn right now are not coming through to StreamYard. I think it's a LinkedIn issue because the ones on YouTube are coming through. But AP's in there, asking, and you kind of got to all of it. Like, you started off the conversation, so he may have tuned in a little late, about like, well, what exactly is conversational intelligence? And I gave him a short answer in the comments, just being like, essentially conversational intelligence is the ability to understand, interpret, and manage conversations to build trust and collaboration, like, generally. But then he's also asking, what about in 2025 and in the era of AI, which again, you kind of got into, but anything else you want to address there for AP in the comments?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the purpose of it too. I mean, you can utilize some of this to even detect attribution. So there's things that you can do, like self-reported attribution is something that we've designed. We actually have a pending patent on it. And so if you think of something where someone, I'll give you a perfect example where, you could be talking to your neighbor about a service, right? Oh, Joe's, pool cleaning service has done an amazing job. And then what do? We go home and we go, oh my gosh, what was Jenny, my neighbor, talking about? Who was that pool cleaning service? What do? We all go to Google. And then we may see Joe's cleaning, the pool service as the first Google listing, which happens to be a paid listing, and we click on it. And then in our instance, you place the phone call, and the attribution could be like, oh, well, Ryan saw a paid listing for Joe's pool cleaning service, and he called. And maybe during the phone call, I mentioned that, oh, I was talking to Jenny, my neighbor, and she said you did an amazing job. And the true real attribution was a referral from his next door neighbor, not the Google paid ad. And that's really important to understand. But there's no way you could do that at scale without something like conversation intelligence. We've had all these businesses that will ask you, how did you hear about us, and those types of things. And they train their sales team and their intake team to ask you about that stuff. But they don't do a good job. It doesn't scale. They forget to ask, or the person just, forgets to mention it, where in many cases it just comes up conversationally, like the example I gave. So there's things like that where you can utilize these conversations to make better marketing decisions. You can pick up on things like, oh, wow, we have all these people that are calling us about a service. And this is a real example. We had a a business that did new parking lots, right? So they do new asphalt parking lots. They started getting a ton of phone calls about people doing like the resealing and the fixing of it. And the person that was answering the phone would just say, no, nope, we don't do it. Do you offer any referrals? They'd be like, nope, we don't do it. And conversation intelligence would pick it up and say, by the way, maybe this is a new service you want to offer because you have a lot of people calling. And by the way, the person answering the phone is just telling everybody you don't do it at all. So it's a new revenue opportunity you can use from this. Or maybe you should adjust your marketing so it is crystal clear you only do new parking lots and new asphalt, and you will absolutely do nothing to repair them or to reseal them. So I can go on and on because I get really excited about this, but you see there's multiple different types of applications from the customer service side or even from the new revenue side or marketing optimization side.
Yeah. Well, thank you for getting into that, especially for AP in the comments. So hopefully that addressed what he was asking, but it shares a lot of really interesting things. So, okay, so we get him on the call, we analyze our call, we improve our calls. So from there, lead conversion, turning interest into revenue. Can you talk to us about that?
Sure. So I think you can certainly do this post-call with conversation intelligence. You can analyze what's being said to turn, what happened during the conversation into revenue. So you can optimize those conversations and do lots of things around it. I think some of the more interesting, more relevant things that are happening now are what you can do with like voice AI agents and understanding the things that they can do on their own to determine intent and kind of direct that intent in different ways to really take that, caller intent or message intent and direct that into revenue and really be able to understand, the best opportunities that are out there. I think that's what's amazing about this technology is it can use data from a lot of different sources to really understand what is the true intent, either from the source that it came from, maybe the page it was looking at, and anything else that we know about the individual to really make it a great customer experience, but also, turn these high intent leads into, revenue to make it a great experience for the customer and to, help those businesses grow. And I think that's where you're seeing a lot of the stuff with AI these days that really help out a lot because you're just doing things with data that we weren't able to do many years ago, in real time, right? To say, oh, this is where the lead came from. This is what we know about the lead. So, be able to prompt it in these ways to ask it these questions to really drive intent. Oh, maybe they're not ready. So kind of back off. Certainly you can do that with humans, but, in situations where you may be utilizing AI because of overflow or after hours or kind of front office, what a lot of companies are starting to do now, it's really advantageous and in fun ways to really optimize, converting those into real revenue.
Yeah, I'm curious, what role are you seeing personalization help to play in this lead conversion? And where do you think that element of lead conversion is really headed, that personalization piece?
So I think in my world, what I am seeing is if you're kind of let's say a new lead coming in is really understanding your intent. So if I'm thinking like, what were you searching? What were you looking at? Maybe what you clicked on, where are you at on a website and what are you looking at right when you place the phone call or right when you started a chat or right when you started a text message, to really understand as much intent as possible to really customize that experience for you. And the examples I give in my world, because we deal with SMBs and businesses, if you think of like a landscaping company, for example, landscaping companies could do, really big landscape architecture, redesign your whole yard and backyard and pool and all that to, maintenance services. And so when you call that business, it would be great to know that, like, hey, we have all this context of what you may be interested in before interacting. You don't have to explain all these things. Certainly for like the new leads, it can be difficult sometimes because it may be limited information. The real superpower is when folks are doing kind of multi-channel conversations around it. So maybe they interacted with you on social and asked some questions, or maybe did chat and then they called in or they did something like that. Then you really can optimize the personalization around it and say, okay, we know you're really interested in this. So I'm not going to, have a conversation about lawn maintenance when I really know that you're interested in this. So I'm going to steer all of this to you. And then I'm going to use this data and feed it back into my retargeting and remarketing platforms for other things that, in my toolkit as a marketer, to hit you with, whether it's, sales or promos or those types of things during the whole, sales process, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things we hit on a little bit before the show, and actually earlier in the show, is how companies are able to leverage some of this data to make transformational business strategy decisions, right? And you talked a minute ago about, the example of a company recognizing new and emerging revenue lines that may drive growth that they weren't aware were a significant demand of people that were calling or potential customers. We talked a little bit before the show about ways that we've seen this kind of technology, especially within the agency environment, help businesses to understand how do they shift their staffing model to make sure that they're really maximizing the ability to drive revenue growth. Is there anything else that you're seeing in the industry and with this kind of technology that's really helping companies to think and approach their business differently in a way that leads to significant revenue growth?
I think being able to utilize this data for new things in their tool chest that they may be deploying as part of their business. So, for example, if you think of something simple like after hours, maybe in the past they were using voicemail or a calling service to answer those phone calls and those types of things. Well, today, they can take all this data of information of how their employees interact with leads, because we have recordings of them, we have conversation intelligence on them, and then they can easily train a voice AI agent to handle this stuff after hours. So now you have this super powered thing so that at 5:01 every day, if that's when your business closes, you don't have to pay a real expensive after hours service that's hard to train and hard to keep up with, and maybe it's not the best experience. And now you can deploy this thing because you have all this data that maybe you didn't have before that's very specific to your business. It knows how to answer questions particular to your business, and it's really good at converting those things. It may be able to book an appointment for those people that call after that, after business hours. It may be able to send them a text message with a follow-up to book an appointment after hours. And so they're really able to capitalize on their data to do these more advanced things in a scalable, efficient, and affordable way that I think just a few years ago they weren't able to do. And it's still really early days. Like you certainly don't see this at scale, even at the enterprise level yet. I think everybody's trying to figure it out. But that's where like the biggest opportunity is, because first contact for a lot of these businesses makes a huge difference when it comes to closing rates and those types of things. And so, if something doesn't pick up, a human or an AI agent, like they could go on to that very next business until they get someone, or they could go to that very next Google listing or whatever it may be. And so, businesses being able to capitalize on all this valuable data to be able to train these things really, really easily and make it customized to their business and deploy them really fast. That's what we're really seeing happen very quickly in the market across the board, even with the smallest SMBs, which is amazing to see.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that. We have another question or slash comment in the chat, but it's saying, I wonder how social listening connects with conversational intelligence and how people are using AI tools in order to do that. And he's like, question?
Gosh, it's all interconnected, because I think social listening is a part of for certainly for these businesses, it could be for a part of their channels that they depend on. So it really depends on, do they take that data and apply it to the conversation? Is it a part of the conversation? Is it not? When I think of conversation intelligence, certainly I'm talking about, I put a lot of emphasis on calls and those types of things, but it really should be looked at as agnostic. Especially in the world we're in now, we don't know where things are going. I view it where I sit as a CPO, being agnostic, whether conversations are happening in social, whether they're happening through SMS, whether they might be happening through our sunglasses or glasses one day. Like, we don't really know. What I'm indexing on is conversations are going to happen somewhere. And the technology to help analyze those and make better decisions and optimize those is going to be a need for all of these businesses. So definitely a important aspect to that. I think it's really dependent on the type of business and, do they have enough data? Do they have enough of those conversations that make it worthwhile to kind of intersect those channels?
Interesting. I never would have thought of connecting at all, but fascinating. And already we only have 12 minutes left and still 2 topics. So real quickly, AI innovation, driving the next breakthroughs. Okay, so from your perspective at CallRail, how is AI driving the next breakthrough?
So the things that I'm seeing now, I mentioned a lot of it is at least from the lens at CallRail, and we see a lot of opportunity with being able to utilize this technology to help them generate more revenue, whether it's overflow, when the business is closed, so after hours, front office. It really can be transformational to them because they don't have the staffing power. And if a user really big stat out there, we get about 250 million phone calls that come through our system a year, and 50 million of those go unanswered. And those are like 50 million lost leads and 50 million lost revenue opportunities. And now technology can really help out with that, whether it's through chat or SMS or through phone calls. I think the next leap of a lot of this, and we talked earlier about kind of the post-call analysis and those types of things. I think as marketers, as business folks, we're so used to analyzing this data through reports and those types of things. I think really the next phase of this is how are we interacting with this data? I envision this day that I wake up and I can go into CallRail, like many other systems out there as well too, and say, what happened yesterday? Tell me what happened with my business with all these people that called in. Tell me the good things, tell me the bad things, tell me how I can improve my business. Should I spend more money on Google, or should I spend more money on, I don't know, maybe OpenAI and their search engine, or Perplexity because they're trying to buy Chrome and they have some new ad platform. And really making it streamlined to where I don't have to set up a custom report. The system's telling me what I need to know, and it's learning from me what I care about. And I can focus on my core business, whatever that may be. And to me, that's exciting because I don't think anybody gets a lot of excitement of figuring out, okay, now I got to analyze this report and then I got to make these updates. And certainly there are ways to streamline it, but I think that's one of those next leaps with this is it takes a lot of that out of your hands and you have a little bit of the easy button. And maybe it's asking you and saying, hey, Ryan, we analyze all this stuff. Go spend $50,000 more on Google right now, and we predict you're going to get another, $500,000 in revenue if you do this today, and it should go from 1225 to 315, and that's your optimal hours for your business. Just kind of like hyper personalized, hyper directed to helping you build your business in ways that we couldn't imagine. So I see that. I see like how you onboard and understand, the platform, these tools. I mentioned earlier with like these AI agents, sometimes they're hard to set up if you don't have the data. So you got to figure out, how do you train them? How do you do that? And so being able to easily do these things to say, hey, I want a voice AI agent to be able to pick up the phone at 5:01 every day and answer all these questions. And again, having that easy button so that they can make that happen without a lot of overhead and being able to focus on their business. So for me, those are those next kind of level AI innovation things. I think the other thing to triangulate on is, where in marketing and in some of this stuff, where is it going? It's a little bit of painting the plane as it's taking off or already mid-flight, to be honest. Because some of that's changing. SEO is changing, SEM's changing, in figuring out how all that plays into this new world as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for getting into that and talking really about AI, because that's obviously the big hot topic. I better go over to LinkedIn and make sure that we don't have any more questions before I move on to anything else. But we have to cover tech stack. We only have 8 minutes. So one thing, because I could go on and we could get into everything you just said, because it was a lot and it was really good. But tech stack. So what tools empower the CallRail team?
Sure. So I'll kind of go a few different places on this type of stuff. I'll talk about tools that my team uses. I'll talk about partners that we use that we've been really successful with our customers, and kind of everywhere in between. So internally, like our product team, we use a tool called ChatPRD. It's really wonderful. It helps our product managers and product designers accelerate, time to value, bringing more valuable features and functionality to our customers by helping them accelerate the actual writing of requirements and discovering discoverability and pressure testing of new features and research and all those types of things, which has really been awesome to see. We also use Gemini for research and those types of things internally as well. As far as like our customers, in some of the products we build, we've been partners with a company called Assembly AI for many years. There are like premier automatic speech recognition company. They're like top of the top class when it comes speech to text, and have been for many years. And again, I mentioned like it's that whole thing about good data in, good data out, and that was such a transformational partnership with them, is to really have a partner there to make sure that every one of our audio files is getting converted to text in the most efficient way, the most accurate, precise way, so that all the analysis that we do post call is the best that it can be and the most valuable that it can be for our customers, which has been great. Beyond that, like I would say, like the new tool, I just found this new tool yesterday. I'm a lifelong learner. I was doing a little AI class yesterday with a group here in Atlanta called Product Coffee. So kind of sharing new tools and stuff. It's called Napkin. I believe it's still in beta, but it's a really fun way to be able to take your notes, throw it in there, and it will generate visualizations of those notes to help you explain your ideas. So whether you're trying to do like a presentation or whether you're just trying to visualize kind of complex types of things and you want to wrap your head around it, but it's free. It's really simple to use. Like you can literally just drop in huge bodies of text and research and click a few buttons, and it just starts auto-generating all these visual diagrams. And so far, so good. Like it hits the mark 80-90% there. And so that's a fun new tool. And research, I like Perplexity, but I I kind of bounce around to all the different solutions out there. I look at Claude. I look at OpenAI with the different versions of GPT, and it's really just my curiosity from where I sit. I want to see the gains and maybe losses that these make over time and how they compare to each other. I think they have their pros and cons, but I tend to kind of test them out all on a regular, if not daily basis.
It's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing all those tools. And yeah, I think that everyone should be trying to test out different AI tools. You mentioned Sybil, is that the one you mentioned?
What's that?
Which AI tool at the end did you mention? Not Agentic. You said something else. I'm trying to remember. ChatGPT.
So I use like Anthropic, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Napkin was the other one.
Napkin. Okay,
Napkin.
I'd not heard of that one.
Yeah,
okay.
I didn't know about it till yesterday. So
I thought you had mentioned one that started with an S or something. I don't know why. Maybe I missed it. Anyway, I'll have to go rewind and go back to that. Thank you for sharing all of that. But yeah, so many AI tools out there that are just popping up out of the woodwork. It's always interesting. I have to go check out Napkin now because I've never heard of it. But we don't have time for any post-topic questions because fortunately this was a really great conversation. You had a lot to add. But in closing, Ryan, would you like to let listeners know how they can find you or anything else that you'd like to share about CallRail?
Sure, they can find me. The easiest place is LinkedIn. I love to connect with people. I love to continue the conversation. Happy to answer any other questions. And then, yeah, a lot of the stuff I talked about here on conversation intelligence and voice AI and all that, that's where we're headed with CallRail, and really excited about how we're helping small and medium businesses capitalize on all this new technology and really helping drive new revenue from it in ways that frankly we probably didn't think were possible a few years ago, and so really continuing that journey there. But yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ryan, for joining us. This has been great. Always enjoy catching up with folks that I've worked with in the past, and as we talked about before show, you guys do some really great work over at CallRail. So excited to. It's been great to catch up.
Thanks.
Yeah, we talk data all the time, but conversational intelligence doesn't always come up. So this was a really unique conversation. Thank you so much, Ryan. Really appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and close out the show, and we'll just want to tell the listeners here about BDEX a little bit. I just put a QR code on the screen. But if you are on podcast, just simply go to bdex.com and click on the Talk to an Expert button. But we want to invite you to get powered by BDEX. So BDEX's industry-leading identity graph is the trusted foundation powering some of the top ad tech and MarTech platforms across the ecosystem. So our comprehensive identity resolution, it drives results across every channel. So we've got from precision ad targeting, website visitor retargeting, to direct mail campaigns, lead generation, and turning anonymous website traffic into actionable customer intelligence. So whether you're looking to enhance targeting, accuracy, recovery of your abandoned cart, scale lead generation efforts, or maximize performance across digital and offline channels, BDEX delivers the most accurate identity resolution in the industry. Just go to bdex.com. You can see some of our customers and partners right there. It gives the credibility you need because we eliminate the bots and the bad data that are costing people a lot of money. So that is waste on your marketing budget. And while providing real verified audiences that drive measurable ROI could really help you, this is the time to start checking out BDEX. So join the leading platforms that trust BDEX and just use that QR code there. Or like I said, if you're on podcast, just go to bdex.com. But we really, really appreciate you joining us, Ryan. And we look forward to seeing everybody back here again next week. But Ryan, we hope to have you on maybe again next year.
Sounds
what
good.
Do you think?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Yeah, anytime.
Sounds good. Well, then we'll continue this conversation then. Talk to you then. Bye-bye.